Tonight, you're listening to Nighttime Knowledge, a quiet place for calm explanations of current scientific and geopolitical topics. This is not a news update. There's no urgency here. You don't need to watch. There's nothing on the screen you'll miss. Just listen. To understand why Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, we need to slow the story down, not to focus on borders or legal definitions, but on time. Because the relationship between Greenland and Denmark was not formed by a single decision. It emerged gradually over centuries, through geography, exploration, trade, religion, and administration. It is a long story, and like many long stories, it only makes sense when told calmly. Let's begin far before modern nations existed, long before Greenland was called Greenland. Greenland has been inhabited for thousands of years. The first known peoples arrived from the Arctic regions of North America. They moved eastward, across ice and sea. They adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. Life followed the rhythms of ice, animals, light, and darkness. For these early cultures, land was not owned in the modern sense. It was understood. Routes were remembered. Seasons were anticipated. Knowledge was practical, shared, and deeply local. These societies were not frozen in time. They traveled. They traded. They adapted. For most of human history, Greenland's story was shaped from within. That began to change around the end of the first millennium. In the late 10th century, Norse explorers from Iceland arrived on Greenland's southwest coast. They came in small groups, families rather than armies. They were searching for land, resources, and opportunity. They brought with them European farming traditions, Christian beliefs, and social structures familiar to medieval Scandinavia. For several centuries, Norse settlements existed alongside Inuit cultures, sometimes separated by distance, sometimes interacting, sometimes trading. This coexistence was never simple. The environments were unforgiving, and the Norse way of life depended on conditions that slowly became less reliable. Climate cooled, trade routes weakened, isolation increased. Eventually, the Norse settlements disappeared. The reasons are complex: climate change, economic isolation, limited adaptation to Arctic conditions. What matters for our story is not why they vanished, but what remained. A memory, a record, a sense within Europe that Greenland was part of a wider North Atlantic world. From this point forward, Greenland was no longer entirely unknown. Centuries passed. Contact became rare, but the idea of Greenland endured. By the early modern period, Denmark and Norway were united under a single crown. This union controlled much of the North Atlantic region, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and through historical claims, Greenland. At first, this relationship was distant and loosely defined. Greenland was not governed closely. Contact was infrequent. But European interest slowly returned, driven by trade, by religion, by the desire to establish order in distant territories. In the 18th century, Denmark-Norway reasserted its presence in Greenland. Missionaries arrived. Trading posts were established. Administration became more formal. This marked the beginning of continuous Danish involvement in Greenland, not as a modern nation-state relationship, but as a managed territory within a larger realm. Control was gradual, often paternalistic, and shaped by European assumptions about development and governance. For Greenlandic society, this brought profound changes. Economic systems shifted. Hunting-based economies became tied to trade. Education systems were introduced. Language and religion were influenced by Danish institutions. At the same time, Greenland remained geographically distant. Daily life in small settlements did not resemble life in Copenhagen. Administration existed, but local realities continued to shape everyday experience. The 19th century brought deeper integration. Trade was regulated. Movement was controlled. Contact with the outside world increased, but slowly. Greenland was administered as a closed territory. Change was managed, and isolation was, in some ways, intentional. Today, this period is often discussed in terms of colonialism. That discussion matters. But to understand why Greenland is still part of the Kingdom of Denmark, it helps to focus on continuity. There was no clear moment of separation, no competing sovereignty recognized by other states. Administration continued, year after year, through wars, through political changes. During the 20th century, the relationship evolved again. After the Second World War, global attitudes toward governance shifted. Self-determination became a central principle. Greenland's status was reconsidered. In 1953, Greenland ceased to be classified as a colony and became an integral part of the Kingdom of Denmark. This change reflected both international pressure and internal reform. Greenlandic people became Danish citizens. Representation in Danish political institutions followed. Over time, new conversations emerged about language, about culture, about autonomy. In 1979, Home Rule was introduced. This transferred responsibility for many internal matters to Greenland itself: education, health, local governance. In 2009, self-government followed. Further authority was transferred, including control over natural resources. Today, Greenland governs most of its internal affairs. Denmark remains responsible for foreign policy, defense, and monetary matters. This arrangement reflects a balance between history and autonomy, between continuity and change. So why is Greenland still part of the Kingdom of Denmark? Because the relationship was never abruptly broken. Because sovereignty evolved rather than shifted. Because international recognition followed continuity, not sudden declaration. And because geography, distance, and history shaped a long administrative connection that adapted over time. This does not make the relationship simple or free of tension, but it does make it understandable when viewed slowly, as part of a long story rather than a single decision. Now let's stay with that idea for a moment, because long relationships between places are rarely defined by one event. They are defined by repetition, by administration continuing from one decade to the next, by maps being redrawn without changing daily life, by ships returning to the same harbors, by laws being adjusted rather than replaced. For Greenland, distance played a central role in all of this. Distance slowed everything down. Communication took time. Decisions arrived late. Local conditions mattered more than central plans. This created a relationship that was stable, but also uneven. From Copenhagen, Greenland was a responsibility. From Greenland, Copenhagen was far away. This asymmetry shaped how authority was exercised. Rules existed, but enforcement depended on practicality. In many places, local customs continued alongside formal administration. This coexistence lasted for generations, even as technology improved, even as ships became faster, even as radio shortened distances. Greenland remained a place where time moved differently. That difference mattered. It allowed continuity. but it also delayed change. By the mid-20th century, this balance became harder to maintain. The world was changing faster. Decolonization was accelerating. International institutions began to define what legitimate governance looked like. Greenland could no longer remain administratively quiet. Its status had to be clarified. The decision, in 1953, did not arrive suddenly. It followed years of discussion, reports, commissions, negotiations. What changed formally was how Greenland was described. What changed practically was how rights were articulated: citizenship, representation, legal equality. But daily life still changed slowly. Reforms take time to reach remote places. Schools need teachers. Hospitals need staff. Infrastructure needs maintenance. For many Greenlanders, change arrived gradually, not dramatically. In the decades that followed, new questions emerged, not about separation, but about balance. How much autonomy is enough? What should be decided locally? What should remain shared? Home rule in 1979 was one answer. Self-government in 2009 was another. Each step adjusted the relationship without breaking it. This pattern matters because it explains why Greenland today is neither fully independent nor fully governed from Denmark. It occupies a middle space, a space shaped by history, geography, and gradual reform. From the outside, this arrangement can seem unclear. Why not choose one path or the other? But clarity is often a luxury of proximity. From far away, binary choices look simple. From within long relationships, they rarely are. Greenland's position reflects this reality. It is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, because it has been so for a long time, because each change built on the last, because no moment required a complete reset, and because the international system recognized continuity more readily than disruption. Understanding this does not require agreement, only patience and a willingness to let history unfold at its own pace. If you're still awake, thank you for listening. And if you've drifted off, that's exactly what this was meant for. New episodes are added quietly, without notifications or noise. Wherever you are, and whatever time it is, I hope this helped the world feel a little calmer. Good night.